All right, today we're jumping into a philosophy that gets talked about a lot, but is often, well, misunderstood. We're talking about William James's pragmatism. And trust me, this is not some dusty old theory. It's a seriously powerful tool for thinking, one that was born out of a major crisis in how people saw the world.
James actually starts his whole book of lectures with this quote, and it just perfectly sets the stage. What he's getting at here is huge. Your personal philosophy, your worldview. That's not just some nerdy academic thing. No, it's the operating system for your entire life. It really does determine everything.
So to really get why pragmatism was such a bombshell, you have to put yourself back in that time. Imagine you're at the turn of the 20th century. You're a thinking person, and you're trying to find a worldview that actually makes sense. What were your choices? Well, the options on the table were, let's just say they were deeply unsatisfying.
You see, philosophy had basically split itself right down the middle into two warring camps. This created a huge problem for anyone trying to navigate the modern world. You had these two fundamentally different ways of seeing things, two completely opposite intellectual temperaments, and it seemed like there was no way to bring them together.
And James breaks this down beautifully. He calls them the two temperaments. On one side, you've got what he called the tender-minded. Think rationalists, idealists. They're guided by lofty principles. They tend to be religious, optimistic. Then on the other side, you've got the tough-minded. These are your empiricists, your materialists. They're all about the hard facts, and they tend to be irreligious, kind of pessimistic.
So this was the choice, a really brutal one, right? You could go with a tender-minded philosophy that gave you meaning, morals, and hope, but as James put it, one that felt totally disconnected from the tangled, muddy, painful reality of actual life. Or you could sign up for the tough-minded, scientific view, grounded in facts, but which basically led you to a cold, meaningless, materialistic universe that had zero room for human values.
This is the deadlock that William James just had to break. And his solution, pragmatism, wasn't about creating another grand ism, not at all. He proposed it as a new method, a way to finally cut through all these endless and honestly useless debates.
And he uses this great little story to explain it. He talks about a group of friends who are arguing like crazy about a squirrel. So a man walks in a circle around a tree. There's a squirrel on the trunk, and the squirrel keeps moving, keeping the tree between itself and the man. The question is, does the man go around the squirrel? The argument's totally pointless until you ask the pragmatic question. What do you practically mean by around? If you mean passing from north to east to south to west of the squirrel's position, then yeah, he does. If you mean being on all four sides of the squirrel's actual body, front, back, left, and right, then no, he doesn't. As soon as you define the practical consequences, the whole fight just vanishes.
So here it is, the method itself, boiled down. To figure out what an idea really means, you just have to ask one question. What practical difference would it make to anyone if this idea were true instead of its opposite? And if you can't find any practical difference at all, well then the two ideas mean the exact same thing, and the argument is just hot air.
I love this. James uses this amazing metaphor of cash value. He says the meaning of any idea is its value when you try to actually use it in the world. What's the payoff of believing it? See, for him, theories aren't supposed to be these static answers to riddles that we just sit back and admire. No, they're instruments. They're tools that help us navigate our lives and, in some cases, even change reality.
Okay, so this is where pragmatism gets really, really radical. Because James takes this same method and applies it not just to ideas, but to the very concept of truth itself. For him, truth isn't some fixed, eternal thing out there waiting to be discovered. Truth is something that happens to an idea. It's a process.
Here's how he saw it working. We all have this big collection of existing beliefs, right? Our old truths. Then something new happens, a new experience that doesn't quite line up. So we look for a new idea that can kind of stitch together our old beliefs with this new fact. And the idea that does the best job of that, the one that causes, as he says, a minimum of jolt, a maximum of continuity, that's the one we accept as true.
So you see, truth isn't a perfect mirror of reality. It's not a photograph. It's a tool. It's a go-between. Its job is to help us move successfully through the world, to connect the dots of our experience in a way that's productive and satisfying. In the simplest terms, truth is what works.
So, what happens when you take this practical, tool-based view of truth and aim it at some of the biggest and oldest questions in philosophy? Well, the results are pretty transformative.
Let's go right back to that huge dilemma we started with. Is the universe ultimately just a bunch of matter, or is there a God? A pragmatist completely changes the game.
Instead of arguing about which theory best explains the past, how the world was created, the pragmatist asks, what kind of future does each worldview promise us?
And this is where you see the huge practical difference. Looking backward, you could argue both theories explain how we got here just fine, but looking forward, their promises couldn't be more different. Materialism, as James says, ultimately leads to a universe where everything we build, everything we love will just be wiped out in the end, a dead end. But theism, well, it offers a world of promise, a universe where our struggles matter, where there's an eternal moral order. Suddenly the choice isn't just an abstract debate, it has incredibly high stakes for how we actually live our lives.
You can see why this way of thinking was such a revolution. It completely changed the kinds of questions philosophers were asking, and it offered a brand new path forward for modern thought, a way out of the deadlock.
So what's the lasting legacy? Well, pragmatism gave people a way to be both tough-minded and tender-minded. It built a bridge between science and religion. It yanked philosophy out of the clouds and forced it to deal with the real, messy, concrete world we all live in. And it reimagined truth not as something set in stone, but as a human tool that we are always shaping and reshaping.
Okay, so to really let all this sink in, let's try applying the pragmatic method ourselves. How about a couple of quick thought experiments to see how it feels? All right, first one. Imagine a scientist discovers some deep, fundamental truth about the universe. It's totally solid, mathematically proven, but it's so abstract and complex that it will never ever have a single practical consequence for any human being. It changes absolutely nothing for us. So, from a pragmatic point of view, what's the cash value of a truth like that? In what meaningful sense is it even true?
And how about this one? Imagine you have to choose a belief about the afterlife. There's zero evidence either way. One belief makes your life here and now happier, kinder, and more meaningful. The other belief doesn't. A pragmatist would ask, which belief is it better for you to hold? Which belief works for you? And does that, in a way, make it the truer belief for you?
This is for entertainment and educational purposes only.